tonight. So we'll start and then we'll see if Kelsey shows up. So I wanted hi everybody. Let's start by just checking in, and Chris is back from Costa Rica, so happy to see her back. And I guess what I'd like to hear is how you are, and then if you had a chance to do more observation and practice, and if you did, what did you notice? So,
Well, on my trip, I noticed that my husband is a auditory learner
mhm,
and practices really slow, and he has a hearing issue, and so that makes it slower. And so now I have more patience.
good.
Mhm. Um, I'm very much a visual
Mm-hmm,
person,
mm-hmm.
and so I'm glad that I gained that awareness because I just thought it was slow processing.
Yeah. It's not slow, it's just different.
Right.
Yeah. Good. That can add some relief to a relationship once you understand that.
Yeah.
Right. Like you
Yeah.
were mentioning, with your husband and everything. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a better
Yeah.
understanding.
Good.
So I'm grateful.
And when did you get back?
Wednesday.
Okay. So you've had a couple days to settle in. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Who else wants to go?
So,
Helena?
yeah. So did you see the piece I sent you? It was just a little Instagram interview with Ethan Hawke, who's an actor. I didn't.
Uh, I think so, but tell me about it.
So it was very interesting because he was being interviewed and the interview was probably there and he would be just like looking at the interviewer and his eyes didn't move.
Uh-huh.
Just be there, just completely. So I'm wondering what that is. He was just totally, and then every now and then he would go, he'd move his head like he was recalibrating something.
Uh-huh.
It's really interesting. So he'd be here, really focused, and then he'd go and come back.
Huh.
So I was wondering what that was.
I find it interesting, and our world is, especially in this country, is very visual.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even if that's not their primary system, they feel like they should keep eye contact every minute. Like somehow, like I have to keep eye contact.
I don't know if he was keeping eye contact because I couldn't see the interviewer.
Uh-huh.
I think it's him. I think he's just, he's just got this different way of things.
Being.
I sent it to you on Instagram, but I was just really interested in how much he stayed.
Okay, I'll watch that with that in mind.
It's just a couple of minutes.
Okay. Okay. Jody?
Well, I'm just super aware of how many Zoom conversations I'm still having, or video chat conversations, groups and individuals, and it is very hard for me to see the nuances on video.
Mm-hmm.
I keep trying and trying, and I just feel like I can't get close enough.
I know.
So that's an awareness. And then I also am aware that unless I'm consciously thinking about it, I do get enrolled in like conversation, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm not watching or paying attention. So I
Mm-hmm.
have to really like think to myself, I'm gonna pay attention right now. Um, but sometimes I've noticed like in news shows where people are talking freely and naturally, it's not a scripted or
Uh-huh.
as scripted maybe, like there's kind of a good place to practice.
It is. It is.
Discovering. Yeah.
Yeah. And usually interview shows are pretty good too, you know.
Yeah. And a little
So,
easier than the video calls. It must just be like my monitor that I'm looking at is so small or something that I just can't
mhm.
get a good like eyesight with it.
Yeah. And especially like the subtler muscle and color changes that happen all along here and there. It's
Yeah.
really hard to see that on a screen.
Yeah. Right.
It's almost like more like you can feel it change rather than see it change, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Anyway, so
and then
that's
the other thing is that that's absolutely normal for everybody, you know, to be really tuned in and then engaged and forget, you know. So that's part of the process. And if you can just increase like over time, all of a sudden you'll notice that you're noticing without noticing you're noticing,
yeah,
if that makes any sense at all.
yeah.
Even you'll go away from a conversation wondering about what it is that you noticed. So part of you is paying attention more and more as you practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jana.
For me, I think I just feel like such a newbie and such a novice at it that I forget, like I'm so engaged in the conversation. And then
Mhm.
when I think about it, I'm like noticing things, but then I'm like, but I don't really know what that means. Like
Uh-huh.
it just hasn't come to me yet. And today I was watching my little boy, Max, talking to his sister on the phone, and I was being really intentional. And I was just like watching him, but he's got the phone down here because he's looking at her on the phone.
Mhm.
And he's doing all that stuff. And I'm like getting down there and trying to just see what's happening. And he's like, Mom, what are you doing? I thought, how am I supposed to get this like without being so obvious? Because like I said, I get engaged in the conversation, so I forget to look. And then when I'm being intentional, it feels like it's just in situations that when I finally remember, it's usually, like with your children, and then it just doesn't seem natural. So I really have a lot of practicing to do.
Uh-huh. I hope that that you'll allow that practice time.
Yeah,
It's really
I
gonna
will.
pay off in the long run. I used to like to write in coffee shops, and so I would like turn my viewer on, just sitting all by myself in a coffee shop, but I just start watching somebody random or a couple across the way or something, because then I'm not engaged, I'm not sucked into the conversation, I'm just watching. Really, and I'd be so anonymous, they wouldn't notice that they were being scrutinized.
And so as you're watching them, I think this is the part that I also have a difficult time overcoming is I feel like I need to be looking for something.
Yeah.
And I
Initially,
don't feel like I understand what the for is completely. So I just feel like I'm one of those people, like if I start anything, I have to read every book on it. I have to understand it completely before
mhm,
I feel that I get a grasp on it. And
mhm.
so I just feel kind of like I don't really
I
feel
think tonight,
connected to it.
yeah, I think tonight's session will help. Tonight, we're going to work with asking questions. So I think I can go ahead, right? We all went around.
Mm-hmm.
So, I started, and I've been more intentional with this group than I ever have been in my life, with hoping to scaffold it a little bit in a good way. And so when I started out with what it really takes to learn something, to build a neural network for what you're learning, that realization, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes not knowing why you're doing it, it takes four thumbs, you know. So just really being easy with yourself in the on ramp. Hi, Kelsey. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
We dove in already.
Good.
So I think tonight when we work with the outcome frame, I think things will start to come together. So if we could simplify it, we did a piece on one person's map of the world being unique and different from another person's map of the world, how all of those sensory bits have been stored and sequenced and put into patterns. And most of the time, it just makes life easier because you know how to put your shirt on. You don't have to relearn it every time, you know? And so, but then there are the times when patterns get set in that are not useful. And that's what we're mostly interested in. And when patterns get set in, they stop a person from progressing in the direction that they'd like to go in. And so tonight, a lot of our focus is, and all of these observational skills are map reading. What are they doing? How are they thinking? How are they sequencing? What are they thinking? How is it going together? You know, you're an architect, you're trying to draw their map out. And so, and trying to understand more of what it is they need. And so this next piece, when, you know, I'm hoping that a year from now we meet and you say to me, holy cow, the outcome frame is amazing. Because right now it's going to look like a list of questions and you're not going to necessarily connect it all up the way that I do after years of practice. But helping somebody to identify, define, clarify, and see what it is they want is crucial. And I don't even think just for coaches, teachers, or counselors or anything, but for everybody. Because very often what we say we want is not what we want. And so that's what we're going to work with tonight. So did any of you, do you have the outcome frame available to you? Okay. And it looks like a set of questions, but it's kind of like Jody and I think of the circle tool process now as fluid. Like you might go into discovery and then you might go into clarity and then you might return to discovery. And the outcome frame is very much like that. You might ask somebody what they want and then three questions later, it's shifted a little bit. And then you go back to, you know, so it's a very fluid, it's not like a journalist with their list of questions in an interview, you know, and they're jotting down the answers. So we're going to start a little, just a little pre exercise. And what I want you to do is I want you to sit a minute with yourself and just ask yourself, what is it that I really want? Could be in your work, could be in your personal life, could be just in your immediate environment, and write it down. And sit a minute with it. Make it something that matters to you. Doesn't have to be a lot, one sentence. Kelsey, you look like you'd rather be on your motorcycle. Got your hat on. Okay, and then Chris was helping me work the whiteboard because I want to spend some time sharing my whiteboard and going through an exercise with you. And by the way, when we'll probably spend 2 weeks on the outcome frame, but once we start working with it, the circle tool really helps with the outcome frame, really helps to bring clarity and bring specificity into what we're asking. So we'll work with that too, because that's a perfect marriage, the outcome frame and the circle tool. So let me go to my whiteboard and I was trying to see how to share or how to save what was on my whiteboard, but we couldn't figure it out. So I'm just going to redraw it. Are you reading my whiteboard? Are you impressed with my skill?
Yes, we can see it.
Just
It
kidding.
says wants.
Huh?
It says
Wants
wants.
and needs.
Yes, needs. Okay.
And we're going to spend some time with this. So would you rather give somebody what they want or what they need?
what they need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And so we're going to spend a little time looking for the intersection between these two, wants and needs. See if I can. No. Okay, so I'm going to put a sentence here. Have you join me. Let's think of what are some very common things that the people around you or yourself. I've literally asked, what do you want, to thousands of people, and they narrowed down to a few, actually a kind of a handful of other things besides stuff. What would one of them be?
My
Fitness
desire to lose
or,
weight.
yeah, lose weight, yeah.
Okay,
Peace.
I want to lose weight.
Yeah, that's mine.
One time I did a community ed course. It was called Why Wait? Why wait? And 28 people with the most traumatic issues came in there, and I was like, what did I do? Okay, give me another one. I want
To have more money, I hear a lot.
more money. Okay, another one.
Somebody said, I want peace.
Peace. I want
to feel healthy.
help to feel healthy. What else?
I want to be happy in my relationships.
Okay, I was waiting for that one. See how far. Okay, so those are some biggies. Okay, so we're gonna go through each one, and we're gonna let the words themselves tell us what's missing in that statement. So if somebody says, I want to lose weight, what are the presuppositions in there? What's hiding in there that you can hear, but it's not stated there?
I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not happy with myself.
I'm not happy with myself. There's the very, very obvious. If you want to lose weight, you must have too much weight.
Mhm.
You wouldn't say, I want to lose weight unless you felt like you had too much weight. Okay. And there's another key word in there that is, that's,
Lose.
huh?
I mean, the key word I think is lose. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe I
No,
interrupted.
I'm quizzing because I want us to pick apart these I wants.
Also, the weight part, really in reality, because that's one that I can connect with, is more of I want to feel confident in my body instead of, lose weight. I think the underlying premise is we all really just want to feel confident in our body.
Right. And the interesting thing, like when you're going into a one-on-one with somebody in any way, and they say, I want to lose weight, and it's our job to find out what that means. So the other key word in here is want. So if somebody wants something, what is the assumption there?
That they aren't. They're
They
seeking
aren't.
it.
They don't have what they want.
Right.
So it's like I want implies I don't have, or I wish implies I don't have. So there, in this one little, I want to lose weight, there it already opens doors and windows into their map of the world and what's going on in there. And it doesn't mean we should assume again or interpret. So that's just our first invitation to get more information And so, um, and this can go so many different ways. It's amazing. Like if you ask that second question, and if you lost the weight that you want, what would happen in your life, or what would you get? And then some of the truer answers start coming out, you know. So let's just go through the rest. I can't remember if it's in this cohort or the other one, but did we talk about the nominalized verbs in here?
I don't think in this group we
I
have.
don't think
Okay.
so.
Okay. So in the third want, I want peace. And this could be all kinds of things. I want happiness. I want serenity. I want peace. I want fulfillment. I want consciousness. All of those words are like frozen versions of action processes that they represent. And so whenever we in linguistics, they're called nominalizations. They are verbs that became nouns or actions that became things. So when we hear a nominalization like that, we don't have any idea what peace means to that person, or what processes would have to be in place in order for that person to achieve peaceful, you know. And I can, after this group, I can share that little video that I did about how do you gump when you're gumping? How do you love when you're loving? How do you depress when you're depressing? You start adding the action back in, and suddenly you get a flood of what that actually means. So once again, I want to feel healthy. What does that imply?
That you're not healthy.
That you're not healthy. There's the want again. Also implies you don't have the health that you want. It's not there. And put my period in there. Okay. So in every one of these I wants is the implied of what I don't have. And so that's our first step of beginning to define clarify an outcome, or begin to see into what is it that they really want. And that we'll do the last one just because we made the list. I want a happy relationship, or happy relationships.
Again, implying the lack.
Mm-hmm. And the range of that can be so vast. You know, a person could say, I want a happy relationship, and every relationship they've ever had in their life is a train wreck, you know. And others could have really, really pretty fine relationships, but then there's something more they want from that. You know, so the range of that. So essentially, when somebody says, as an opener, I want to learn how to have happy relationships, it's a statement without meaning yet, because we're just going in. We're going into the cave of who they are to see what that might mean. So and it's interesting. I think I told Jody this one time. I might have been doing a real estate training for 150 realtors, NLP training on how to sell more houses. And the people who stopped me afterwards to come and talk to me, guess what they wanted? They wanted to lose weight. They wanted more money. They wanted more peace. They wanted to be healthier. They wanted their kids to be happy. They wanted better relationships. It didn't matter if it was a group of lawyers or judges or school teachers, or what they want had a common ground. And so that's something, you know, and it took me a while, but that was something that after a while I thought, you know, there's some basic things that people want / need in their lives. And the more we know about that, we may be able to cut through the sort of the bullshit and get to what it is they need. And so I put the word needs up for the same reason. And I spent a lot of time with things like Maslow's hierarchy and lots of different ways of viewing those very, very basic human needs. And it's pretty simple. Give me one.
Food.
Food. Give me another.
Sleep.
Belonging.
Belonging. Give me another.
Sex.
Safety.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
I heard two. Go ahead.
I said shelter.
Shelter. Chris, did you say
And
one?
sex.
Huh?
Isn't it sex?
Sex would be one. Oh, I better make my letters smaller. I'm running out of room. Okay.
How about safety?
Sex. Safety. Okay, let's see if we,
Connection. I guess that's belonging, though.
yeah. When you start, what was the first one?
Food.
I don't know what that, oh, I was trying to put sex in there. Okay, so food, a sense of belonging, shelter, and if we could put under, probably under safety, we could put such things as food, shelter, water, and all under safety. Like I as a human living being need food, shelter, water, also need love, belonging, sex, and not necessarily just sex for sex sake, but intimacy. Are we missing anything?
And
Connection.
then I think connection, but that would maybe go with belonging.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because nobody puts money up here. Money is not necessarily a basic human need, other than how it provides these other things. So even though so many people, when you ask them what they want money, they're really saying, I need something that I'm not getting, I don't have enough of. There is maybe one, and I don't myself know where to put it, but it's like, it's that dynamic urge, creative expression, authenticity, the need to express yourself, either artistic.
Self-actualization is what I
Yeah,
looked up, or what.
yeah. So
You could say community too, because like in a community, you're sharing
yes.
That's belonging.
that sort of thing.
And then I'm going to put self-expression. These are very broad. And so in my experience with working with people, this wants is so big. We can't ask, what do you want, without hearing, what do you need? They're linked. And so when we're going in to start asking those first sets of questions and inquire about and listening for what is it that that person is saying they want, we also have one ear open to what are they saying they need. And a lot of times this self-expression I'm gonna also put, because this comes up a lot, the freedom for self-expression, the freedom to become. So that a lot of times lurking in the what they're saying they want, or not lurking, but like contained, is what they need. And if we sort of forget about the surface ask and start listening for what is it that they need, we start to get closer to what is really going on with the person. So let's say that somebody says, I want more money, or I want more financial stability. And you say to them, so you go into the outcome frame and you say, okay, if you had more financial stability, what would that give you? What would
And
maybe
they
be
would probably say freedom.
Yeah, they would say freedom. So right away, you go from it being a tangible thing about money to being an intangible about freedom. And so if you had the freedom that money would give you, let's say, then and what would you be doing that you're not doing? How would you be acting that you're not acting? What would that give you? If you had more money so that it allowed you more freedom, what would you be doing with that?
And then I think that's when it is related to experiences and, you know, being able to be creative or having the time to be more creative,
Mm-hmm. And
self-expression.
it will be individualized for somebody else. That might, if somebody at a lower level of development, and I don't like the lower higher paradigm, but let's say at an earlier stage of development, I want more money, which would give me more freedom from my abusive husband. That's going to look totally different. And so somebody at a higher level of development, which is part of why I thought it was important to include that in this, the ask, usually there's going to be an ask for a higher level need. So if we could rearrange this needs, kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, the basics, getting the basics, like I need to be safe, I need to have food, I need to have shelter, I need to be not freezing under a bridge, baseline. And then moving up from there, I need better relationship, more connection, more community. And moving up from there, I need a stronger sense of belonging. I want to feel a higher expression of me, and moving up from there. So you can see that listening for want, need is also listening for level of development.
And do you know what I hear in all of that? It's
But
going directly corresponds to the chakras through your energy centers. And you
right.
went in the exact same order that it would go up.
Mm-hmm. Why I think there's so much intersection between spiritual paradigms, therapeutic paradigms, even financial paradigms, is because we're all talking the same language. We just don't know it, you know.
Mhm.
Or we have different vocabularies.
Mhm.
So I know prior to getting my own exposure to those 5 levels of development and my own understanding, I was sometimes trying to fulfill a higher level need when a lower level need had not been fulfilled. There was no safety, there was no protection, there was no groundedness. And so, and it doesn't mean that people with more fundamental safety issues, let's say, in their lives aren't still seeking. They are. It's wired into us to want something different, something more, something bigger, something better. And so I never assume that that's not in there too, you know, even if it's somebody like I worked with a woman one time who, well, she was actually a potter, an artist, but she had like PTSD experiences around a rape, an early rape, and then she had even earlier sexual abuse. And so that was like overriding her creative desire. She couldn't get beyond it. And so we had to sort of lay to rest one set of old programs and patterns before the new could develop out of that. And I, whether it's, and this will be interesting too, Jody, for the business development, the same thing is true. You could be in a room full of CEOs and top level uh, commandos, and what are they thinking about?
The
I want more.
relationship with their kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want a
Their
happier relationship. I want, yeah. And so, it's sort of like we almost can't address all the surface chatter without addressing some of these really deep underlying wants and needs and how they're connected. And then once some of those are, those systems are operating better, yeah, stack up the good stuff, There was a lady, and I just heard this story yesterday. My neighbor somebody gave her a chair. She's bought 5 chairs. So if this lady came in to me and said, I want a new chair, I would be like, okay, what would that new chair give you? Well, maybe my back would stop hurting. Oh, so she's gone through 5 chairs trying to find comfort for her body, and I think of how easy and how quickly, when we don't sit with it and work with it, we might just want to go get her a chair. Here's your dang chair, but we're not hearing that she has deep, deep ache in her body that needs to be addressed. We don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I can't address that. But if I only hear chair, I'm missing it. And and for some of us in the different kinds of ways of working, like really deep-seated back pain could be chakra. It could be ancestral issues. It could be vertebrae, but it could be a lot of things, So the goal sort of it's almost like the do no harm of a doctor's world. This is solve the right problem. Don't focus on, whether they make 10,000 a month or 1,000 a month. It's like, what do they need? And so I see a lot of coaches and counselors and therapists and even consultants solving the wrong problem because they didn't ask enough questions. And they didn't go deep enough into the questions to really get the answers. And then once you get the answers, it's almost like a bingo. You start following that loopy outcome frame, and all of a sudden you almost like get a sense of it, like bingo, that's the one. An amazing, amazing number of women who want to lose weight were sexually abused. And I've worked with lots of them. And so the weight is a protection. If I'm too heavy, then I don't feel sexy and nobody wants me. I don't have to worry about it. I mean, look at that twisty, turny path. It's not about the pounds. I think there was even research done. I think it was something like 73% of women with weight issues had been sexually abused.
Oh.
So what do you, what should we go now with this framework and look more closely at the outcome frame, or do you want to talk about this at all?
Let's look at the outcome frame and how it fits in.
Okay. So the outcome frame, 2 things. It's sitting with somebody to really listen for the need, and it's not interpreting for them, not assuming what they might need. So I'm going to close my little whiteboard. It'll probably disappear forever because I don't know how to save it. Elsie, do you have any ideas?
I'm gonna screenshot it right now for you, and then
Okay.
we'll have a copy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have it.
All right. Okay. So then I'm going to bring up just a note, and what I want to do is spend some time, but let's take a moment though. Look at what you wrote down when we first started. And look for what you don't even have to tell us, but what in there, what need do you see rising up out of the want? Or does it look different from when you first wrote it down?
Well, I wrote desire to lose excess weight around my midsection and keep it off.
Okay.
And then I think the nitty-gritty of it is for what else will change when I have it. I will feel better about my appearance and be healthier.
Okay. So in a lot of, well, we'll go into this, but so the outcome frame is beginning to take a combination of the want and the need, the want with the need clearly visible now, and then begin to craft a desired outcome. What would that look like? What would that feel like? So I'm going to bring up the outcome frame and we'll work with that a little bit together. I'm always so proud of myself when I actually get things up here. I'm learning. I've learned a lot in the last year.
I'm super proud of you, actually. I think
Thank you,
it's
Jenna.
amazing all the things you're doing.
Okay. So I'm going to actually go down further to the problem frame. So there's a way of approaching this that I want you to be really clear on. In the problem frame, and a lot of people live their lives looking at what's wrong rather than what they want. And the problem frame just naturally leads the brain further into structures of problem. So if I ask somebody, and maybe they're looking sad, and I interpret that, oh, they're sad, and I say, why are you sad? That what goes into the brain is a search for how sad am I? And have I ever been more sad? I think I'm really sad. So just in your lead, are you sad today? Puts them in a further search for sadness. And that's not the way of finding a desired outcome. How awful is it? I mean, I've seen a lot of people, and sometimes it's couched in the greatest sympathy. Are you okay? Has anybody ever come up to you and said, are you okay? What's implied in that is, oh, she doesn't look okay. Something must be going on. I think she's a mess, So the problem frame, even in companies and corporations, when we start to look like what's going wrong with this company, we begin to identify when somebody goes into a doctor's office, what are your symptoms and how bad is your body breaking up? It's a very natural inclination to begin to identify what's wrong instead of what's wanted or what's right. And one is an upward movement towards solution, and one is further deeper into the problem. So, and I've got a little bits of explanation here. Okay, so let's go back up now to so in one sense, the outcome frame really is kind of a set frame. What do I want? And when we start to go into challenging the question, what do I want? We really want to see how specific we can get. What do I want? How will I know when I have it? What's keeping me from getting it? What else will change when I have that? Have I ever had it? What can I begin doing now to get it? Is there anything I will have to give up in order to have this? So that's the very prescribed outcome frame. But like I said earlier, it's very fluid. You move all around, and it's interesting when you get to what will I have to give up? A lot of times what that does is unearth the hidden objections. Like if I lose weight and my body becomes fit and beautiful, then I'll have to deal with men again. if um, I have relationships that are really strong, then people will have expectations of me. They will expect something of me. So we like that question in place that says, what would you have to give up in order to have what you want? So let's say, and let's play with it a little bit. Let's say that somebody comes and you ask them, what do you want? And they say, I want to own my own business. Let's just play with that for a little bit. Let's say I'm your client. I've come to you and say, I feel like I have my inner entrepreneur and I really want to own my own business. How would you start to frame your questions around my request?
What kind of business do you want to own?
Okay. So what kind of business? So think of all your questions trying to ask for more and more specifics. So let's say I think, oh, well, I think a wellness business would be nice. I'll just make it up as I go, okay? Some kind of wellness business.
Do you have a specific passion in the wellness industry that you'd like to focus on?
Yeah, I really would like to help women lose weight and get fit.
And what made you choose that? Why is that a passion for you?
Well, when I was little, and see, here you went to a why question.
I know, and you're
Yeah,
not supposed to.
it's interesting because the why question makes me want to go back in time to say, oh well, when I was in third grade, they called me chubby and pushed me down on the playground, and it's not a wrong, but just notice when you go to a why question, what happens. Because most people are used to telling themselves stories about why life is not working. And when a why question comes in, there are a lot of times we go to our stories.
But do you think like in that specific case though, that story might help them
No,
overcome that? No?
Could you
maybe
just ask
later.
it differently? Do you have experience losing weight or helping women lose weight? Or is that a different than why?
Yeah, I think because I really would love to have each of you take this specific list of questions and maybe find 2 or 3 people this week to just say, can I practice on you? And stick with the questions. And the only additions outside of those questions is, well, what specifically? Okay, so if you had your wellness business, would it be in an office complex? What specifically? What do you see or think? And so asking for more and more visual and other detail added to the what I want.
And is this in an attempt to get them to flow in that direction?
Yes.
In the direction of whatever it is that they're saying that they want. So that they're not stuck in the past with the stories of why they can't do it and why they haven't been able to. We're going through this outcome framework in order to help them move forward within whatever they think they want.
Yeah. And if you think of the circles on the circle tool board, we're also it's also coincides with we're asking them to step out of what's familiar and what is totally known and add clarity to what they think they want. And, clarity, detail. And there's a reason for that. A lot of people will have a wish want to, and it's like a cloud wish want to. I wish I want. And it's out there so fuzzy and unclear that it has no detail. And when it has no detail, it can't be activated. There's no motivation. Someday, maybe if. Does that make sense? So I'm running a lot of different lines into this But this outcome frame is potent that way.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I was just trying to understand, what was the reason behind it.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Like, let's help them really get to the space of manifesting what they really want.
Yeah. Like if you were, like, let's say I said I wanted a gift shop. I want to start a gift shop. That's what I want my business to be. And if you can get me to see, and this will vary, this is initially like probably the first question you should have is, what would that do for you? Like what will that be? What will that do in your life? I don't think that sentence is in here. I need to get it in there.
I just want to say too, and Jana, just not only manifesting, because it's one thing to keep thinking about it, but we probably all know people, and even ourselves, we might have been thinking about something that we want for years and years and years. So it's almost like asking questions to peel through the layers and get to what action can be taken to lead them in that direction.
Mhm.
So they're not just like sitting in that wishing, like wanting, but they actually can take some forward movement.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that, I don't know if that contributes, but so pardon me if it doesn't, but
No,
No, that it does. Yes, thank you.
but there is a sort of a tier. It's kind of like the circle tool process. So, and I think I need to back up one step. Initially, when you start asking these questions, listen for need. Because no amount of gift shop is going to solve the problem if the need is something else. So let's say in the first round, we're listening for need, what would that mean if you had that? What would it feel like on the inside if you had that? So well, I would feel like I had some financial security. Oh, you want financial security? What would that be like? Do you know what I'm saying?
or if I had my own business, I could have more time to be with my kids.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's really what I want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would have a more flexible schedule, which is a very different need than a cute little gift shop on the corner, Or if I had a gift shop, then I would know that I had accomplished something, That tells you something different. So, and there is no hard and fast way, but I'm just thinking as I'm saying these things, Jody, how it coordinates with discovery and clarification. So it really coordinates.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
We asked the same questions in many ways.
We
using
do.
the circle tool when we're assessing what is it that we're looking at, and then going into discovery, clarifying, clarifying. Yep.
And so additions to our circle tool process, this frame puts a better frame around it. And especially if in the assessment of a first encounter with somebody and you're on the open circles and you're what I do is I'm looking for levels of development. Do they have a high level need or a base level need? I won't say low, but what is the need? Is it for more safety? More the basic needs, safety, shelter, food, comfort, or is it a higher need? Expression, consciousness, community, connection. So on the circle tool, we get a sense of that. Oh, okay. I'm not sure, but maybe this is where they're at. Then you flip the board and you're in discovery, and your NLP tools, your observation tools get turned on, and the same with the knowing field. You've turned the knowing field on and you've turned your ability to hear and listen and see. And then you ask, what is it that you want? And I think that when we would work with this and become really competent with it, it's going to be a powerhouse.
It is because I think it connects to people feeling heard, listened to. You're helping them clarify what it is is going on. To what
You're
Jamie said earlier, if you're not addressing like the thing that's really the thing, that's why people keep talking about the same thing over and over and over and not taking any action or seeing any shifts, because it's not the root or foundational
uh-huh,
need or want or factor.
uh-huh. And then I think a lot of coach counselors, consultants get caught in thinking they know what is needed and begin to offer tools prematurely.
Mhm.
And then you're providing support and tools for the wrong issue.
Mhm.
Based,
Or sometimes they just like get into a loop of intellectualizing the
right.
problem with you and talk therapy, and then you go nowhere for weeks
Yeah, you're
and
just
weeks.
like, okay, have fun talking to yourself. Right. So if we're approaching this in a open awareness way with both the circle tool and the outcome frame and our NLP skills, we're trusting them to know where to move, to give us the right information, to go deeper into their own map and say, no, I think what I'm saying is I want 2 hours to myself per week, you know, like, and it's stage of life stuff too, like young mommies, you know, they need some me time. I don't know where that came from, but so and then I'm also folding into this, and Jody and I have talked about this quite a bit, structural tension. So I don't know if some of you are how many of you are list people? If something goes on your list, what is the likelihood of it getting done?
For me, it gets done.
Right.
Yeah.
Me too. And
Hi.
I may go to the next page before that one gets done, but it's not going to let me go till I go put that little X in the box. And that's an activated tension system. You put that down there, you made a box, or however you guys do your lists. Now you're committed. And so bringing something closer into view for somebody so they can better define what it is they're saying they want, get it out of the clouds, begins to activate tension systems. How can I bring that closer? How can I get that in place? And once that they can go on a list, which Jody and I've worked with this a lot with, adding action to the discovery clarification process, uh, with the hopes of moving through the process, like gain all the information, clarify it, get some tension around it so you can see clearly if by next Thursday I do X, I'm on the right path toward having what I want. I hope I'm not being too big and broad here. Are you guys with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, it's and I love the way that this will intersect with the circle tool to make us better and better at mining what somebody's map of the world is giving us. You know, I'm going to go down and show you one other thing about this. Okay, so in NLP, the people that built this outcome frame spent a lot of years with it, and I've spent a lot of years with it. And in realizing that when all is said and done, there's certain criteria to a well-built outcome. It's well built if the language is specific, not just I want to own my own business, but I want a gift shop with front windows and that focuses on pottery, you know. How specific can you get? Um, Rich versus how rich. Like a lot of people want more money, but are have deep-seated reasons why they shouldn't say how much. We need to get underneath that. Has to be stated positively. It can't be a what you don't want. I don't want to be unhealthy. As soon as a negative is introduced into the desired outcome, it becomes a negative outcome because the brain can't process negative statements. If I say, don't think about pink elephants, what do?
Think about pink elephants.
Yeah, they're everywhere. So it
Mhm.
has to be stated positively. It has to be obtainable. If you told me you wanted to grow another set of ears so you could hear better, I don't think that's possible in the real world, you know? So it has to be obtainable in the real world of possibility. This is a hard one. It has to depend on you for realization. It can't be like, if my husband would change, I will be happier. It can't be causal that way. It doesn't work. It has to add to your life and not take away from it. I see a lot of people who may have start with the outcome of I want to own my own business, and 2 years later, they're working 24/7. And now that business is taking away from their life rather than adding to it. So we have to be watchful of that. It's generative and spreads out. That must be my language, life it like a pretty flowering vine, like once something gets moving and outcome comes to life, it's bright, it springs new growth here, there, comes in unexpected ways, and it doesn't impact or hurt others or the inner self.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but if you're looking for an example at any point, I have one.
Okay. No, I'm looking for now, like I put a lot of stuff out here. Now I'm looking for how can we integrate it in the next 20 minutes in your thoughts and discussion. So yeah, let's open it up and see. So definitely an example would be good.
I was just thinking this might be, you can tell me, but I think this might be a relevant example. I was introducing the circle tool to someone, and not a business connection or in a business way. And she said that she wanted more fun in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked some questions around, well, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
What would that do for you? What is that looking like? And she went through the story of what her friends are doing for fun. They're dancing, they're going out to eat, they're going drinking, these kinds of things. And
Uh-huh.
then if I kept asking, and we got to the reason she was thinking about it, the real reason is she was missing her good girlfriend that she used to talk with like several times a week and laugh and share stories, and
Uh-huh.
like that was her fun. She didn't want
Uh-huh.
to go dancing or drinking or eating or whatever, but all of her other people in her life were doing that. So she was thinking, well, what's wrong with me that, at this age I'm retired, I should be doing that stuff. And but when we got to that, so like just even a friend conversation, if you're listening for
Yeah.
what is underneath it, it was really powerful for her to leave. And then she sent me an email the next day saying that she invited a couple of people over to eat and she cooked because that is something that she loved to do. And it was feeling like work for her until, she had kind of that fun sorted out.
So
So
did her friend die or something?
yeah, her friend
Yeah.
passed.
So
Yeah.
see, look at what's hidden in there. Her
Mhm.
saying, I want to have more fun. Underneath that is loss and grief,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it's just so
So I
powerful.
could have stayed there and been like, well, why don't you go dancing? Why don't you like
Yeah.
dancing? What could you do if you went dancing? But yeah, I would have missed this like connection And also
Right.
an opportunity to help her see something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway.
And it's so nebulous. You know, you sometimes you start a conversation or a session with somebody, you have no idea where it's going to end up. And you can't control that.
Yeah.
Because if you take first thoughts, it's probably wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really interesting conversation with a person today about who had a reaction to something I said. And we ended up having this really long conversation about how easy it is to push a button when that button's activated, you know, here. And anyway, it was a really interesting conversation that we were able to clear a lot of stuff and it felt really good. And if we had just gone on first response, we might have disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that that's our biggest responsibility in connections is realizing when a button is being pressed, but it has nothing to do with the person right in front of us.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
because that's the thing that puts the wall almost immediately. So if
Yeah.
you don't catch yourself when you don't see that in someone else, you start responding reactionary, and then you cut them off basically, and you
Yeah.
can't connect.
And that's so normal. Like if something feels threatening, it's so normal for its fight, flight, freeze, you know. And so that's really normal. But if you're seeking higher awareness and advanced awareness, that's when it's not normal. You have to stop and say, okay, I'm going to look further into this, you know. The it's interesting to me and was like coming into this cohort, I'm, you know, the 5 levels of development, the natural human learning process, those aren't even NLP, you know. This idea that we could have sort of a meta picture of, and the circle tool, we could have sort of this meta picture of here comes a person into the frame that has needs and wants, and they're, even if it's a friend, they're coming to you to see if you can help them sort that out. These are some really keen tools, sharp tools. And they take patience and they take hyper awareness and they take lots of questions. And a lot of times I've done the outcome frame sometimes with a person for an hour and a half in a session and never did an intervention. The outcome frame was enough. Same with the circle tool. Sometimes somebody will work their way through a process on the circle tool, and by the time they're done, they got a full answer to what it is that's needed. And they worked it through themselves, which I think is very empowering. I don't like to see people become dependent on, go to the therapist and say, oh, therapist, what should I do?
So that brings up a question that I have is how to make sure my stuff doesn't get into their session, because all of these things do resonate with everybody.
Yeah.
We all feel them, right?
Yeah. And we tend to
not
attract
not go
people with,
correct, and not
right,
go to advice. Well,
right.
when this happened to me,
Mm-hmm.
how do you stay out of that?
Mm-hmm. I think that also is practice. And the more, I used to think that the ideal scenario would be that I had worked hard enough at integrating myself that I had no more buttons you could push. Like I'm button free.
Good luck.
I'm still working on it
Yes,
until
I
my brother
aspire to that
says,
as
oh,
well.
your Ouija board.
And if if I might offer, for me, Chris, if I can stay in like I'm the listener and I'm curious, if I can stay, I'm the listener, not the problem solver, I'm the listener,
Yeah.
then I can let it just develop and it's not, then I'm not thinking about me. I'm really with them,
Mm-hmm.
listening and following along in their conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that offers anything, but that helps me.
And
Yeah.
I think eventually, like in this mode, both with the circle tool, because the circle tool naturally sets up a distance, you could almost be sitting there looking at a circle tool setup and going, you know, her situation's very much like mine. I better pay attention, you know, like there, if once that separation happens a little bit, and I think NLP supports that because you're so busy watching, you know, but it's okay to notice that there's a resonance or that there's a similarity or that there's a similar path unfolding in your client and just watch it. I was doing a constellation one time and my niece was in it and she was a representative. I was just, Jody, was I telling you this or
Yeah, we
somebody?
just talked about, yep.
Yeah, so she's in this constellation and the person's picking representatives, and all of a sudden she picks a representative for a dead sister. And my other niece died early at 28. And so now I'm the facilitator, but it's my niece, and my niece is in there. Anyway, the whole thing just got too hot, you know. And so I said to my niece, I said, I'm releasing you from this role. We'll find another rep, you know. Because it was my family system, my sister, my niece, you know. So there are times when you just go, no, I'm not the right one for this. I'm just not.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's part of being mature and recognizing like, we better not do this, you know. And we actually were able to go on. I just had to disconnect my own family system from the system I was working with, you know, take my niece out of there.
It's also an opportune time to recognize that it's something you have to work on personally. Like you're saying, like, oh, I should pay attention to what they find out on the circle tool because I feel something about it.
Yeah.
Um,
You take that as a heads up, like, oh, okay, maybe I need to look at something here.
yeah, it's and you because it's happening in that moment, and you're recognizing it, you can practice like
Mm-hmm.
distancing and being impartial to it
Mm-hmm.
in that moment if you have the energy to. And hopefully, if you're having that type of conversation with someone, you've agreed to it in an opportune like time when you have the energy to do that. Like you're not starving or something or
Yeah.
tired or
Yeah.
like you should probably stop a conversation like that from happening if you're tired and hungry.
And I think that most people who are committed to helping other people are committed to doing their own work. If they're not, then they're dangerous, you know, because I know that the further along you go, like my very first year in training as a family constellation person, I followed my German trainer to like 9 different states and workshops all over the place. And our little training groups, that first year, you know, you'd be sitting there and just go, you know, resonating with everything, you know, and and you're heartbreaking for people and you can't facilitate when you're in if you're that you don't have any shield. So you have to work through some of that. I wasn't in my niece, I wasn't willing to put her or me back into the grief of losing Jesse. Why would I do that? You know, was hard enough the first time. So,
The comment about not immediately going into advice because you've experienced what they're talking about before. There's a different way that you can focus on that and not immediately go into advice, and it's by seeing it as an opportunity to understand them fully because you shared that experience. So if it comes up while they're talking about it, you can think back, oh, this is how I felt, and then you could probably even ask questions that you wish somebody had asked you,
mhm,
and you might hit home a little more because you have that experience.
yeah. And I
And
think
that's less advice and more just helping them feel seen, which is the goal.
and I think it can enhance the trust even more when I don't think coach, counselor, therapist should be somehow high on a mountain, you know. We're not. We're down here in the trenches with everybody. So Helena, did we lose you? I'm gonna go out. Can I go out of share screen now? Yes.
Yes.
So on this sheet, it's fun. I have done as much of this with myself as I have done with other people. And I start getting lost. I take my notebook out and the first sentence I write is, what do you want? You know, how would you know
So
if you
I'm
had that?
here, Jamie, I'm here. I've just been laying down and I've been listening.
Okay, good. I was hoping you would taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to stop share and then um, so what do you think about that possibility of asking one or two or even three friends if they will sit with you while you practice the outcome frame? Is that too much homework or would that be okay?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you give yourself permission to, like I said, I'm taking a training. My teacher said I have to do this. This is my homework. And so you put yourself in a comfort zone before you even start. So it's okay if you don't do it perfectly or if you feel like you're stumbling through it. But really, really keep in mind like the circle tool process. Be willing to go back and ask, what do you want? Multiple times. You're winding back to it as you're sharpening the view of what they need, not just what they want. The what stops you from having that very, very often will bring up the parts of you that are trying to sabotage. Very often. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid my family will think I'm crazy. I'm afraid, what stops you from having that thing that you want? I think it's too risky. What if I don't do it right? You know, those are where the self-doubt, the little self-doubt and fear will just pop right up.
And it's so important to just listen to those and not try and fix them. Because then if you immediately respond with a fix response that it sounds like a fix, you're just advocating for this idea that they're not enough.
Yeah.
When in reality, you just have to listen and be like, that's a valid thought. Like, I have these thoughts too. And just treat them as neutral thoughts that are allowed to be there, basically.
And a lot of times it'll, like in my position where some people do come for that kind of work, that's what they're coming for. I have a part that's trying to stop me from trying something and I want to know what it is, So it really depends on the depth of the work you're doing and then knowing which hat you're wearing. Like if it's a friend, I don't go into counselor mode, or I try not to. Or sometimes like even Jody, like Jody and I, Jody, should I put my coach hat on or are we business partners? And we both do that for each other. So like know what hat you're wearing before you go in too.
Mhm.
So if you're going to ask, if you're going to ask 2 or 3 friends to do a practice session with you, don't go for their deepest, darkest. Leave it alone. You know, what is something that if you could have it in the next 3 months would be really meaningful to you? Oh, I'd like this. So keep it kind of light.
Mhm.
And then next week, I don't want to just present this and move on, because this is where eye movements, language cues, everything comes together in how you use this. So next week, we're going to do both the outcome frame and the circle tool. And maybe a couple of you will help me practice with breakout rooms, because I'd like to assign us into partners and even take like 20 minutes to work with each one, working with the other. So you get the flow of it. It really has a neat flow once you move into it.
Mhm.
So
Do you ever have people when you're asking these questions that just say, I don't know? Like, what do you really want? And what if they say, I don't know?
well, that's in a way they're saying, like, they're saying I want to keep the screen blank, you know. They're still telling you something. Like if it were me, I would say, well, you know, would you like to know?
Okay.
I have met people and worked with people with a very, very low dynamic urge. I think it's almost like, you know, you think of different levels of sexuality or libido or whatever you want to call it. I've met people with very low dynamic urge. And sometimes when they say, I don't know what I want or I don't care, they mean it.
Mhm.
And then I'm probably not the person to be working with them,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to kick butt and inspire. You know?
Yeah.
So I would listen carefully for that. And sometimes it can be real flatlined, like their dynamic urge is flickering out. And that worries me.
Mm-hmm.
If it's I don't care instead of I don't know, that's even more important to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to end with a little story that Dr. Larry LeShan told me that I thought was so great. And he's a really great mind. That he wrote Cancer as a Turning Point. He wrote some really important books. But he was telling me, Milton and I went to interview him, and he was telling me about he was a psychotherapist working in a terminal ward. And he said, of course, all of his patients kept dying because it was a terminal ward. And he was very Freudian. And at some point, he decided to switch his approach, and instead of looking at where they were dying in their bodies, he wanted to look at where they were still alive, where they were living. So he started to work with what he called their zest instead of their death. And he said when he started doing that, it was like turning up a flame on a lantern. He said some of the people started to get better as they worked to find where they were most alive. And he told the story about this one woman, and was just really flatlined. And he found out that she loved ballet. She was like in her late 80s. So he knew a ballerina. So he brings the ballerina to the care unit and introduces them. And the ballerina brings her a little pamphlet from a recent ballet. And the woman is just like amazed and inspired and in love with this ballerina. And the next time Larry saw her, she's like, I think I'm going to write a book on ballet. And so she started researching and bringing in books, and her family was bringing in books. And he said the next time he went to see her, she wouldn't even let him in. She's like, I'm busy, I'm writing a book. And
That's
so that re-engagement with, and she had had a really hard early life, ended up, you know, raising brothers and sisters as a young kid. And he said to watch her come alive was just mesmerizing. And it was just a little flame that got relit. I love that story.
It's a good story.
Yeah. It has a sad ending though. I don't know if I should tell you the sad ending, but it was so sweet because Larry cried when he told it. It was during one of the times when New York City had a big blackout, and the care unit she was in lost all power, and she died of heat exhaustion.
Oh,
But she was like, I think by then she was in her 90s, but he was still crying about it. That man had such heart, has such heart. I don't know if he's still here or not.
Mhm.
Anyway, where we live. So I'm doing pretty good. It's 8:32, but we are going to take a moment to go through um and process things. I realized from even some of the recent groups and stuff, sometimes I can say or do things that push buttons in you guys, or that put you in reactive mode. But I think that if I wasn't stirring that up a little bit, I probably wouldn't be doing my job. So, but if something gets stirred up, we talk about it. That's what I like. So let's do a final round. If you're confused about the outcome frame, my teacher used to tell me confusion means you're about to learn something wonderful. So work with it. Who wants to start?
I can.
Okay.
I would like to know more about the circle tool. I've only just used it once
Okay.
with you. And so if there is a handout, I know that there was a previous cohort that worked on that. And you mentioned how well it flows with this information.
Mhm.
So
I would love to. I can't remember what we worked on when we did our one-on-one, but yeah, I'd love to give you some introductory materials, and we're still shaping that like we
yeah.
want,
Okay.
but it's just shaping in such a nice way.
Okay.
I would love to learn more about that too, because I've never had it. I have it,
Okay.
but I've never have it, had it done or seen it done. And I left it in South Dakota. So I would also like to learn just to understand how they correlate with each other.
Okay. And so Jody, there's your chance.
Well, Monday night, the first Monday of every month, we do an introduction to the circle tool, and we go through right from the basics, how to use it with the process. So that could be something, it's free, it's complimentary. So you're welcome to come, and people that want to just see what it is or learn are coming in. And it's via video.
Do you want to talk about your business group?
And then in April, I gotta get the exact date, but because I'm not looking at the calendar. In April, I'm starting an online program again that focuses on organizations, teams, leaders, and looking at bringing in the circle tool and growing your business as a conscious business or a conscious leader, creating conscious teams in our space today. So that's happening in April, and we'll be sending out the invite for that this week.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a place too, if you are working in organizations or with teams or with leaders.
And then once this cohort ends, I know that I'm going to be lonely, and I'm going to want to start another one. And Jody, we hadn't talked about this, but I was thinking we need a basic circle tool group now. You know, like beside maybe a one that coordinates only more for personal and yours is business. But we'll talk about that. But we're in a lot of decision making about platforms and email delivery systems and all that junk. and getting very close to making our decisions. So you'll know about everything we're laying out.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
And don't be afraid to try it. It's amazing. So we didn't go all the way around. Helena, are you recovering? Are you okay?
I'm hearing everything. I'm just listening.
Okay. Well, we want to say goodnight to you.
Yeah, I'll say goodnight.
Okay. Take care. And I hope your TV show is a smash hit.
Well, it'll be next week or the week after.
Okay. Who else didn't chime in yet? Jana or Kelsey? You good?
I'm good. Yes, thank you.
This 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 week's one is just really rich with a lot of information. And I feel like as you're going, all of us are probably thinking of like 10 things at once.
Yeah.
For for every beat of the conversation, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And would be something we could touch back on with our differing uh experiences and modalities and stuff like that.
Hmm.
This one would be really good to do a conversation on after this cohort.
Yeah. And then also, next week, I really like the idea of us adding this, strengthening this layer of actually working with all the pieces we've learned so far. So,
Yeah, I would love some more practice on the modalities as well as looking at people, seeing, are they visual? What's their framework? Is it visual, auditory, kinesthetic? In that regard, I
Mhm.
feel like I did watch the video, but I would love some more.
Okay. And there's also more, a whole nother layer of linguistics that I haven't included yet, but I don't want to overwhelm you. I'd rather you have time to really practice what we've done so far and in tuning in before we add a whole nother structural linguistics thing. So it was a little bit today, like implied messages within a sentence and stuff like that. So, all right. Well, good night. Sleep well.
So everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
All right.